Hello and welcome back to our garden podcast. You might be wondering why we've got a different background today. Two reasons really. Was the last time we tried to record up in the jungle, we fell upon monsoon rain, didn't we?
And frogs leaping.
And frogs and bits and bobs. So we've decided to, going forward, because of the winter months not approaching now, but when they do finally, it just made more sense for us to film in a stronger, more robust shack stroke garage stroke cottage shed.
If you could see what's behind the camera, you'd be disappointed in both of us, but this looks all right. I think I'm pretty pleased with the setup.
Yeah, I think we're doing and you
cottage vibes.
Quote, you love brick. So
I do. Yeah, I did. Yeah, in the last one or the one before that.
There's plenty of brick.
There's plenty of brick there, and there's a lovely spade which you enjoyed when you walked in, didn't you? And cottage vibes. So
it's looking good. Right,
it's all good.
Moving on. So we're going to chat about cottage gardening and our experiences with, or more Ollie's experiences with cottage gardening for the last 5 years that he's been at this address. So what would you say is probably the first main thing to look out for when starting or creating a cottage garden?
Well, I knew when we moved in this house, I knew we had one kind of really hot south-facing border, because the time when we viewed the house, it was like half sun, half shade. That very first time, and we kind of took some pictures of the back garden, sort of show family and that. And
it's very chalk and cheese. The garden.
It is, yeah. It's like having two separate gardens. It literally is, and obviously with the south-facing side, the left side, which is the hotter side, that's one kettle of fish, and on the other side, because it's not only gets vast majority of the shade during the day, it's also massively overrun with big trees. You know the names of the trees, but we've got massive oak at the back.
Mainly Leylandis.
Leylandis, there's like big conifers and bits like that all the way along.
We've got the oak at the back of the garden as well. I mean, the roots from that oak probably are.
Oh, they'd be massive. Yeah, they'd be massive. Anyway. Yeah, I mean, the oak, I think Sarah next door said it's about 35 years old, because she was here when it was originally from seed, basically, and she saw it grow from that. So, yeah, and obviously now it's absolutely massive. It's beautiful, but it is massive and it does cause problems. But equally, it gives me that shade at the back of the garden for the kids and stuff. So I'm not,
Yeah, we wouldn't be without that, would you?
No, definitely not.
It looks bloody beautiful.
It does, yeah. And when my shack's built at the back of the garden, that's going to be called Under the Oak as well. But back to your question, so knowing that left-hand side of the garden is pretty much full sun from like 10 o'clock in the morning, from sort of May through to like September, that is like full sun all day.
So you knew that left border, having been here a couple of months, was going to be the one that was going to contain the colour, the majority of the cottage planting.
And I'll tell you what, when we first moved in, so we moved in lockdown, on the night of lockdown, which I've mentioned in previous podcasts, so it was literally in that March time, so going into spring. Mum bought me two hanging baskets, one pretty much exactly the same. I put one on the left-hand side and one on the right-hand side, not really knowing what was going to happen. The one on the left-hand side, as you can imagine, went absolutely mad all summer long, and the one on the right-hand side died of death. And so even just from silly things like that, I could tell, right, that's the colour side, that's going to be the green side. Obviously, it's taken time to get to the point where I understand that we've got really sort of clayey soil throughout the garden. It's really kind of, there's a lot of content of like old brick and bits and pieces of like what I presume is like where old sheds laid before.
I know through the years that you've introduced compost, and you were composting your own, haven't you?
Got two big. Yeah, it's gone a bit by the wayside, but they are there.
But so you like adding manure, and, bits and bobs just to try and improve the soil, I suppose.
Yeah, I've done a bit of manure a couple of years ago, and that helped to a certain extent, but I haven't used it regularly enough to be able to say, yeah, that's a massive help. I know it is, but I haven't used it enough. But yeah, I buy compost in when I feel like certain plants need it. I'll use it. Obviously, when I'm planting new plants or putting my seeds out and my tomatoes in and bits like that. But with that side, I'm so proud of that side of the garden this year. I mean, you can see here, when I walk up there now, there's colour, there's fruit in there.
Yeah.
So I've got my tomatoes growing in amongst the kind of plants and flowers that I class as cottage.
That's a great great addition to any cottage border, and even the jungle side of it. To be fair, it's nice to have a splash of something edible. I've got a rogue raspberry plant growing up there.
Yeah.
But like I say, it takes on a different form, and I know fruit and veg is a big part of cottage gardening as well.
Yeah, I mean, traditionally, the traditional cottage gardens, when you go back in history,
was kitchen
gardens. Yeah, and they were grown. You were growing your own fruit and veg, and you know, it was all year round. You had veg growing, you had fruit growing through the summer seasons, amongst herbs and your mints and your other bits that look fantastic.
Like companion planting still is a massive thing now.
Yeah. I mean, people have different takes on it now. Like Adam Frost's got a different take on it to what certain other people I follow have got different takes. The same with your jungle, isn't it? There's
think
no
is right or wrong?
No, definitely not. But I am learning.
There's guidelines, but we all know that we can break the rules.
Yeah, and you can bend it, can't you? And I've done that to a certain extent because I've put that banana plant in amongst that border, which I fully class now because it's got my edible in there, like my tomatoes growing amongst the Sanchez and the.
That doesn't count as a fruit tree, by the way, just because it's a banana
Oh,
plant.
really? Well, I've got my apple tree outside the garage from the neighbour. So
the ensetos won't produce.
Oh, from the banana plant, yeah.
That doesn't count.
You never know. You never know. You haven't succeeded, so I might.
Ensetos don't produce fruit. So.
No, you never know.
Okay.
But no, that gives it that. I think it looks brilliant. I mean, I think putting that banana in there. I mean, you told me to get the banana, but you didn't tell me where to put it. And having put it in there,
are you disappointed now that I've told you it won't produce bananas?
I am. Yeah, I might go and tear it out. To be fair, well, that was my.
Well, no, you are right. The big leaf tropicals do help. They do help to break it up, don't they?
Yeah, and that's going to give it height, isn't it?
Yeah, massively. Yeah. Well, you tried the darker leaf cannas, didn't you? And it just wasn't working for you.
Yeah, no.
I think the bananas are a little bit more robust.
Yeah, and when you look at it because obviously you look at your garden from all different levels, don't you? You know, when you're weeding, you're down low, and when you're up high and you're walking past it, you're from a different angle. So from above, you're kind of looking down on the banana leaf. Next to the tomato. Yeah, for now, yeah. Next to it always will be probably for me, to be fair.
Yeah, we'll get there.
But looking down on that and then seeing the other kind of prettier cottage flowers growing amongst it, underneath it looks great. And when I'm weeding and down low and laying bark and things, and you're kind of looking up it a little bit because it's 2 or 3 foot now, you think, wow, that is some backdrop, and layering is there as well.
Yeah, already your garden, especially on that side, is starting to show the different layers and the different textures. And you've only been cottage gardening, was it 4 years or 5 years?
This is the 5th summer now. Yeah.
And it's taken that long to kind of understand.
Yeah, it has. Yeah,
and get to grips with like the position of the sun, what the border's doing, how dry it is, how wet it is. It's taken a few seasons, isn't it?
But it has. Yeah, and there's a lot of.
I think showing this year that it's you've learned what you need to learn, and you're running with it now, aren't you?
Yeah, and the mistakes, like we always say, we're amateurs, as we always say, and we make loads of mistakes. But as long as you learn from them, you learn to appreciate it so much more when you get it right. Do you know what I mean? So the things I've got right, like the osteospermum, I've tried 3 years in a row now. I'm not going to try again. They're just not working. For some reason, I just cannot get them going properly.
Some people can't, like certain plants, I can't, cannot grow.
Yeah, and it's a shame because they look stunning in some of the gardens along in the front of this. When you walk along my road, they're amazing. And you think, why can't I get them going? But yeah, it's one of them things. But I'm just going to third summer going. I'm going to give up on them and try something different next year in that place. I'm the happiest I've ever been with that. But when you say about layering, I don't know if that's a cottage garden thing or not, but
yeah, definitely
it is. I like structure, and I like I said before, my tea chest and bits and pieces. And we said in the last one, it gives it that kind of gradual layering. But again, I've made mistakes and I've put stuff from seed that has grown massively at the front of the border, and I think it's literally like that rather than that.
Yeah.
So again, you live and learn, don't you?
Yeah, exactly that. And I think, like you say, with the tea chests and the sculptures and a couple of bird baths you've got dotted around, haven't you? And the rusty metal.
I love rusty metal.
The rubbish,
the crap. Yeah.
But no, it does work. And whenever we go to garden centres together, you seem to be drawn towards the rusty obelisks, don't you? And the rusty
just can't afford them.
No, they're
£100.
A bit pricey, aren't they? But yeah, again, if you stuck a 6-foot obelisk in the middle of a flower bed and then grew, say, sweet peas or a clematis or
Yeah.
You know, some sort of climber, even a rambling road.
Chuck a tomato in the middle of it.
if you must. But yeah, it really does work.
Yeah, it does. And I think that there's so much in cottage garden that, like the runner beans and the sweet peas and things like that, that will climb all day long. I mean, they will climb as far as they can climb, won't they? I mean, you see the ones at Wisley when we went there, those sweet peas were on obelisks bigger than us. I mean, they were huge and just covered in it. So they will grow and grow and grow, and that gives you that real height. And then underneath and in and around all that, you know, you've got that structure in place already to then really form something cool around the bottom. And like I say, try with seeds as well. Like I've tried the wildflower meadow mix and things like that, and
Cosmos was a success for you.
Cosmos was, yeah, they were, to be fair, and I did that from seed a couple of years ago. I haven't tried that this year.
No.
And they flower all summer, don't they? So I don't know why.
And you get different heights and, you know, dwarf varieties. And again, like I said to you, I made the mistake years back when I did cottage gardening. I put mine in the shade, and they were 6 foot, 7 foot plus. They got absolutely huge because
the Cosmos. Wow. Because they're looking for the sun.
Looking for the light, the sun. And then at the end of the season, you got a spray of flowers.
Yeah.
Whereas all the other ones are done, the ones that were in the sun.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can bend the rules. It doesn't always work.
It's like that begonia. I mean, that begonia that I've got out this summer and planted 5-6 weeks ago. I mean, that is unbelievable.
And that's in full sun.
Yeah, and that's in full sun. Like that is full sun from 9-10 in the morning until, I mean, when that sun comes back round past the trees again, it's got it all pretty much all day long, and that's done amazing. It's stunning. That's next to the little wildlife pond, isn't it? And that's next to the standard bay tree.
Yep.
Yeah. So I've put the bay tree kind of in the middle of a border, and like we were talking before about depths of borders, weren't we? And that bay tree is in the middle of the border, but it is, because it's a standard, it's next to that begonia, and it kind of just works.
It does. It
shouldn't work, but it does. And then it's all obviously barked nicely next to the wildlife pond. And next to the wildlife pond, there's kind of the unmowed, because I leave certain sections of my grass when I mow it. I leave it certain bits unmowed along the edges, so it allows the daisies and the dandelions and certain grass seeds to come through. And I've kind of left it by that wildlife pond, knowing that there's going to be amphibians going in there and certain insects that will live amongst the grass.
It's a good trick. Well, it's not necessarily a trick. It's just lazy. But with mine, I leave a lot of the wild weeds in because they're not big blousy flowers, and they're just these little pops of colour, which is great. And even some of the grasses, if I see a certain grass that's, you know, creeping out of, say, the boardwalk gap or something, and it's, you know, it looks fairly attractive and it's getting up to 2 foot in height. You know, and that's another thing with grasses and cottage borders, the movement in grasses, and there's so many different types.
Oh, there is. I know.
Colours of grasses, and, you know, the flowers at the end of the season. And I mean, I grow miscanthus, which is it's 3 meters high, and I use it for a lot of the backs of the borders. But there's no reason.
Is that a grass?
Yeah, there's no reason why you couldn't use that, you know, in a cottage border as well for a bit of height, and, you know, and it sounds great when it's windy. Yeah,
and it's like you say, it gives it that movement, doesn't it? And in, you know, when the wind's blowing and it's not so great, it still gives that element to the garden that, you know, it's amazing what you see grow when you leave a patch of grass. It's incredible what you see come through. I mean, you get the odd thistle come through and you think, God, and then you think, oh, actually, there's a flower on that. And you give it another week and you leave it rather than just chop it down, and it's suddenly a lovely yellow thistle that's there. And, you know,
you land on it.
You land on it, yeah, or the kid runs into it, toddler runs into it. But yeah, no, it is amazing what happens when you leave it. And yeah, it's there's certain patches of that around there as well, which I think adds to that kind of cottagey vibe. And the brick border, that's a massive thing with me, like the brick border, and then the brick kind of, what I call it, the Victorian circle at the end. I've made I don't know why I call it a Victorian circle. I think it's because where I got the bricks from, that was from some Victorian property.
They probably did do that in cottage garden.
I've heard it somewhere.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's called a Victorian circle.
Should have done a research. But it is really good. It is really good, and it is really effective.
It's one of my finest pieces of art.
It's just, art's one word. It's just a shame it's so far out of the way of the main bit of the garden, isn't it? Because you've got it right up under the oak tree, which I mean, by the time you get to the oak tree, both borders they've gone, haven't they? You've done the borders. But it is nice for a fire pit, isn't it?
It is great.
I mean, a beer or 10.
Yeah, I think it's really good. When I had that really light coloured bark, you know, when we got that light coloured bark and we paid for it between us, and we had like half and half, I thought, oh, this looks amazing. And then literally within 2 weeks, obviously the dog had got rid of half of it. The kids had run all over it, and it was just back to standard like dark coloured bark again. But it really popped for about a week. It really popped out, and it looked great. But you know, when you've got 5 kids like we have, you can't.
Nothing's there for long.
Nothing's there for long. No, I'm lucky the borders have survived this year, to be fair. But yeah, I was going to say to you actually, you know that verbena bought.
Bonariensis.
Yep, that one. Do you not think that would look good in your jungle garden?
I did try some.
Part, did you?
Yeah, but I got it. It was uprooted in the summer, so that I could see what it would look like and where it would be.
Yeah.
And it looked great until it died back, which I expected. But I did expect it to either seed or, you know, the root ball to come back the next year.
It hasn't.
And it hasn't, and that was 2 years ago. So
yeah, mine hasn't worked here.
A lot of the other jungle YouTubers, they have, you know, dipped their toe in verbena as well, and it does work for them. But
yeah,
I think where the garden is super shady now, isn't it?
Yeah.
I do try and keep it damper than drier.
Yeah.
I don't think it probably just doesn't suit.
Also, it grows high, so your canopies are, mind you, your canopies are high enough now to probably cater for some of that, aren't they? Yeah.
I just don't think it's a successful one in the garden.
Yeah.
Having said that, I need to admit something. When I came around the other day and I saw your salvia that you'd bought.
Yeah, it's lovely. Isn't it?
As soon as I left there, I went straight to the shop and bought the exact same.
Did you?
one. Yeah, and it's
B&M.
It's planted. It's planted up in the jungle. But again, I don't know if it's going to work because I've put it in a position where it's going to get dapple shade.
Yeah.
So fingers crossed it'll be enough.
I think it'll work if it grows. I think it'll work.
Yeah, I mean it was in full flower. So the reason I put it in dapple shade was because the open garden's not for another 4 weeks, and I think I've probably done it too late in the year really for flowers. So I'm hoping if I put it in the shade in a darker spot, it will prolong the flowering.
Yeah.
And I've had loads of experience with that. You know, we've spoken about it quite a bit, planting things in shade or dapple shade.
Yeah.
And stunting the flowering time. So I'm fingers crossed it will work.
Yeah, I think it will. I mean, if it grows well, I think the colour and the form and stuff will work really well. To be fair, yeah, they're really nice. Mine's still in the pot. I need to get it in tonight actually. You see that hollyhock that's come out for the first time in 5 years?
Yeah, that looks lovely.
So I had that. It's a really nice colour one. I'm not a massive fan of hollyhocks at all, as I said last time.
Did you not? Weren't they on the shady side?
They were on the shady side, and I moved them when I put the aces in on the right hand side, on the shady side. I think the bolt's just fallen out of this chair. So if I fall, did you hear that?
Yeah. It wasn't your money.
Keep going. No, it certainly ain't money. Yeah, I moved the hollyhocks when we put the aces in. I thought, right, I need to do this right because once the aces are in, they're in, and I'm not moving them again. So I moved the hollyhocks just out of chance, and they literally the day after I moved them, I went and checked them, thinking, oh yeah, they're in the sunny border now. I've watered them well, and literally like that. Oh, no. So I left them, and then just kept watering them, cut them back a little bit, and now, you see them now.
Really nice. I saw them in the short.
Yeah,
made a really nice.
Yeah, really nice. That colour, I'm not a massive fan of them at all, like I said, but that colour works really well. And it's towards the back of that garden now where I'm going to be getting taller and bigger plants like your Tetrapanics you gave me. That's going there. That bears breeches, which is the Acanthus mollis. Yeah.
He's learning.
So I took a cutting of that a few years ago. That's got massive leaves and a massive tall flower. So that sort of stuff's all going up that end where the shack is eventually going to go.
And again, you've got one of those on each side, haven't you? So
so it mirrors.
Yeah, and you've got the repeat planting, which
there's a little wildlife pond as well in there, right next to each other.
Yeah,
so
they're like opposites, but you're going to find it hard because you've got the hot border and the dry border in shade. Yeah, it's going to be very hard to mirror image plant for plant. What will work is if you can find a plant that flowers the same colour or different colour, similar colour foliages that can mirror each other. Yeah, you're going to get it to work.
Even if I can get the same kind of size foliage, like as you're going up, just the bigger kind of bolder foliage and the bigger leaves, the bigger taller flowers. That's the kind of idea. So not only are the borders layered, but the garden's layered, if that makes sense, because the garden's on a slope as well, isn't it?
Yeah, slight slope.
So. Yeah, so leading up towards that shack, if it just gets kind of bigger and bolder, and do you know what I mean?
Yeah, more bowsy.
Yeah, but it's going to take a couple of years, and I know it's going to take time. All gardens do, don't they? And like you say, it's
you're lucky with
having that patience.
I mean, both borders you've got, you're lucky in a respect that both your neighbours have got very matured gardens. Yeah. So, if you lose your fence panel, or not literally lose it, but if you lose it with a plant or a rambler, growing up the side of it, you've then got the layers from next door as well. And then beyond their garden you've got next door, and so and so, because it does go up.
Yeah, because we're at the bottom of the road, and as you like I said before, as you look up, you've just got trees beyond belief everywhere.
Yeah, so you're lucky in that respect.
Yeah, you've got that detail there.
Borrowing borders and backgrounds,
yeah,
and backdrops is, it's clever.
Yeah,
but it's
detail. That's detail.
Massively recommend it, because it is, it's easy. You don't have to maintain it.
Yeah.
And I think, especially with my garden, there's a huge leylandii from next door. But if that ever got cut down, it would completely transform the shape and the look of the jungle as you walk up.
Yeah.
So you need.
I was just going to say, God knows what people think about your neighbours think about your garden, because I don't know how they blend theirs into yours.
You wouldn't, would you? You wouldn't.
No, whatever you put in their garden, they're just going to be thinking, I can't compete with that. No way. But yeah, no, we just see how it develops, and where are we now? Middle of July. So we've got good couple of months of decent warmth yet to still get things going, and the tomatoes ain't even red yet. We've got all that season to come, and that fruit and veg to start picking up, and then it's into later in the season. My carrots and my later potatoes and stuff like that we're going to start getting out, and slowly
adding to the borders.
And just seeing what works. But I personally think I'm really pleased with it.
You should be.
Yeah, I think it's come a long way, hasn't it? What would you do different? What would you add to my garden at the moment if you could add a couple of things?
Oh, maybe. God, that's a good question. I think
like jungle or cottage.
No, I'd stick with your plan. You've got, well, you haven't got cannas, but you did try cannas, but you've got the large leaves from the insettes.
Would you get a couple more of them in, or just sort of see how that goes?
You've only got the single one. Maybe try it just for this year. See if you can overwinter it.
I was going to put one next to the fish pond, like in there somewhere.
I'd put one on the other side to, like you say, mirror image it, rather than two on one side and none on the other.
Will they be all right in part shade then?
We had this discussion in the last one, didn't we, with my jungle, where I
that's true, and they just try and look for it. Yeah.
So in my experience, yes.
Yeah.
But it is dry shade, so you're going to have to keep on top of the watering.
Yeah, because it does get sun until about 11, 12 o'clock.
Yeah, they do like damp feet.
So I might get another one or two for that other side.
But as for what would I add? More ferns, I think.
Yeah.
And just more of what you're doing.
Just pack that right hand side of
more of what you're doing, and just keep that mirror image in mind.
Yeah.
And hopefully next year the height will come.
Yeah. We'll see where we are this time next year then.
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
Yep.
Yeah. Happy days. Cool. Well, thanks for watching episode 3.
Yep.
Of our long form YouTube content. Keep watching the shorts, because we're doing a few of those a day at the moment, and they're doing quite well, to be fair, aren't they?
Mm.
And we're just doing little silly ones of us like setting up and bits and pieces, so you can kind of see a bit behind the scenes of what we're up to. But yeah, we're really enjoying doing this, and we hope you are too. And we will see you on the next episode. Thanks very much.
See ya.
See ya.